Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chatter, a podcast from The Gist, with me, Josh Hamilton. Jonas Salzgeber, the author and biohacker, was our guest on today's show. I first came across Jonas having read his book, The Little Book of Stoicism, which he co-wrote with his brother. It really helped me find a positive way of looking at the lockdown and using the time as best I could. And after a few emails, I found myself in Thun, Switzerland, interviewing him on the way to visit a friend who was living nearby. We had a really in-depth conversation on Stoicism, his discovery of the philosophy, the process of writing the book, and his work with his brother on biohacking and on sleep. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget my book, BREXIT, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. So here's Jonas Salzgeber. So, Jonas, this is super exciting. I can't believe we've finally done it, like several months of planning of me trying to get here. And we finally get to have this chat about your book.
Yeah, it's great.
So I discovered Stoicism thanks to your book, thanks to a friend of mine that just was posting on Instagram on her story about it. I hope she's listening, actually. I'll send her this episode. Hopefully she will. But she just kept posting stuff and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I was blown away actually when I read it, and I was like, how have I never come across this before? Because the only times I'd found Stoicism were in a couple of books I'd read this year where people were talking about Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, and it just sort of kept coming up. And then she had posted from your book, and I was like, okay, I need to find out what this is all about. So, like, what first introduced you to Stoicism?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks to your friend for posting all this information on her Instagram. I got introduced to Stoic philosophy through Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, probably as many other people, because he has a big audience and he writes, in my opinion, great books. And the book is based on a Stoic idea from Marcus Aurelius, what stands in the way becomes the way. So I was intrigued, I thought, okay, so this is about Stoic philosophy. And then after reading the book, I thought, man, I know nothing about this philosophy. So I decided to dive deeper, and I ordered many books and read articles and stuff and tried to, dig out the original sources, from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and Rufus. And yeah, I read a lot, and it was Ryan Holiday who introduced me to this philosophy, and then one thing led to another. And yeah.
Like, one of the things that struck me was at the start of your book, you were talking about how you couldn't find like an all-encompassing book on Stoicism that despite the fact it was several thousand years old, that no one had put together just like a summary of it. Like, okay, perhaps that was just the very nature of the Stoics and of like ancient Greek philosophers, was that, it had to all be in your head, and to write something down was almost cheating. I really love that idea that Plato was horrified at the creation of the written word almost, that you shouldn't be like using books to write things down. But why do you think no one had done that for Stoicism?
I think there are a couple of books out there who probably tried to do it and did it in their way. Stoicism and the Art of Happiness by Donald Robertson, I think, is a great book and was a good resource for me. And I learned a lot about Stoic philosophy. And also William Irvine's Guide to the Good Life. I think they tried to put Stoicism into a book. And I did it because it wasn't enough for me, because I thought I need to get an overview, really. And I think it was because I was talking to friends and they asked me, so you're reading all this stuff about Stoic philosophy, so what is it all about? And I really struggled explaining, Stoic philosophy in a simple way and also understanding it for me, So I tried to break it down and make it simple and try to come up with this overview of this wonderful philosophy. And I just tried to make it even simpler than these guys did. And I don't know why they didn't do it, 2,000 years ago. Maybe they did actually, because I think many texts were lost during that time. And because, they taught Stoicism in their schools, so they must have known what it's all about. And yeah, what you said about the Plato, I think it's really interesting. And what I understand is that you cannot put reality into a word, because then you focus too much on the word, and it loses kind of, its connection to reality, because you just have the word, and it's not the truth, basically, I would say. As if when you give a bird a name, that's a sparrow, and then you don't look at the bird anymore. Just you name it, and that's it.
I've never thought of it like that. But you also mentioned in your book that you initially began by writing like an article, like a really long, like all-encompassing article or so. That was your first attempt at trying to codify it. And then you talked about how someone had then stolen that article and tried to, what was that like? Seeing that you put all this work in, and all of a sudden it was being used by someone else and putting their name on it. What was that experience like?
It was a great test of my Stoic philosophy in a way, because I did my research for the book. So I, looked at different Kindle books, and I found this one and thought, and you can always, look into the book. I thought, I know these things, and then I bought it, and I realized that's my article. And, it's frustrating, but I learned that I think this happens thousands of times, to people, and I think it's okay. Because I look at, Stoicism as a helpful way for people, to live their lives. So these are helpful tools for people. And I try to, look at it, the more people learn about it, and the better. So it was really hard, but then I thought it's going to happen in the future as well. And that's fine. And theoretically, we all take ideas from others as well, because when I talk to you, you say something and maybe I'm going to use it later without referencing to you back. And so, and also my book, most of the things are learned from others. And I try to say where I learned it from, but sometimes you forget or you don't remember. And then, so it was a good test. I got a bit frustrated and angry in the beginning, but I quickly realized I need to practice Stoic philosophy and focus on the things I control. And I was a bit disappointed as well from Amazon, who obviously didn't test this book or look at it, or so I thought that's a bit disappointing from Amazon that they don't check where people have their books from, basically.
Did you attempt to recoup some of the money that this guy had made from your article, or did he take it down eventually? Did you get in touch and be like, hey, come on, this is my book, this is my article? Did you have it take it down?
I wrote an email, because I bought his book, and then I think somewhere he had a lead magnet, so you can download it, and then they send it by email, and then I responded to that email and told him, hey, your book is from my article, or it's exactly the same. So I asked him to take it down, and I don't remember whether he responded. I just thought it's all I can do, and I think in the beginning I also texted Amazon. But they just said they can't do nothing.
Jeff Bezos didn't step in personally.
No.
Maybe this is a good time to get you to define what Stoicism is. Obviously, people go by a little book of Stoicism, but say you had to give an elevator pitch, 60 seconds or a few minutes, just what is Stoicism and what does it mean to you?
I would try to do it with the Stoic happiness triangle I created for the book, because that was the exact idea, to break Stoicism down. So you have a triangle, obviously, and at the center of the triangle you have the goal of life, or what the Stoics thought, or for them was the goal of life, and they called it eudaimonia. It's a Greek word, and it means being, good with your highest self, whatever that highest self is. And maybe it's your soul, or for some, it's just, your ideal version of yourself, or I don't know. But basically, you want to live a good life. It's what we all want. We want to be happy, and we want to have good relationships, and we want to flourish in life. So that's the goal. And how can you get there? So they have another Greek word, arete, which basically is about expressing your best self in every moment. So you need to be aware in the situation and try to express your best self. One strategy that's helpful to do that, then is the second corner of the triangle, would be to make the best use of what's in your power and take the rest as it happens. So it's, you focus on the things you control and try your best to accept what you can't control. And yeah, that's a simple idea, but it's obviously not so easy, because we don't control many things in life. We just have our actions and maybe opinions or thoughts that we can't control to a certain degree. And the last corner would be take responsibility. And that's sort of twofold, because the Stoics said, for the good life, it's enough to try your best. In every moment, try to express your best. That's enough to live the good life. And also take responsibility for how you respond to the situations you face in life. So you have many things that happen to you you don't control. That's, about the second corner. So, and then you try to take responsibility in the way how you respond to this situation. So something happens to you, for example, the COVID-19 lockdown. You can't control that, but then you're asked by life, basically. And so how do you respond to this situation? And if you take responsibility, so you're able to respond to this challenging situation always. And we want, or we must take responsibility always, or we should try to take responsibility always in our lives and try to make the best given the circumstances.
It's funny that I find that the more I read about Stoicism and the more I think about it, that there's a lot of people who I would have read or listened to or respected that really embody like some of the ideas of Stoicism without necessarily labeling it as Stoicism. For example, last year I read Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life. And a lot of that book is about standing up and like taking responsibility for your actions and saying, okay, I am the person who is going to make whatever happens to me. It's not going to be someone else that makes my future. And the more I think about it, the more I realize it's like, oh, that's why, like, it's funny that resonated with me, but I didn't quite put it like as Stoicism because it wasn't maybe mentioned as such or labeled like that. And then you mentioned about the pandemic has obviously been a testing time for a lot of people. I found it to be both one of the most frustrating and most transformative times of my whole life, in a really paradoxical way. Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday actually had a really great conversation about how to make the pandemic like the best or most productive time that you can possibly do, and about like taking responsibility and going, right, okay, I can't control what's going on now. It's the pandemic is the pandemic. The lockdown is the lockdown. You can write about it. You can complain about it. You can argue whether it's necessary, but you can't physically like change the fact that you're probably going to get fined or arrested, or you were anyway in some countries, for not adhering to the rules. Did it change the way you like practiced Stoicism or the way you thought about things, or did you find it a challenge? to have to like confront that?
It just made it clearer to me at the lockdown that Stoicism is there are valuable tools in Stoic philosophy, and they're most valuable when it's challenging. So the lockdown just gave me, this clarity that yes, Stoicism can be helpful. And I mean, I've been practicing for a couple of years, but I realized, it's been tremendously helpful in these situations as well, you said they talked about Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday about making the best of it. And that's a lot about reframing how you look at the situation. And so you can obviously see the bad stuff, but if you change the frame, maybe you find a better angle to find the positive in this challenging situation. And I feel like I do this in many ways automatically, because I don't know, it's become ingrained somehow that you will look for the positive, and almost magically you see what's good about it. And plus, I've learned not to, despair, not to, complain too much about stuff out of your control. It doesn't make much sense. If you can change it, sure, then try to change it. But it's reality. It already is as it is, and it doesn't make sense to fight with the reality. I think Epictetus said, fighting with reality is fighting with the gods. So I think that's right. Whether you call it God or gods or the universe, doesn't matter. But so for me, it just showed that Stoicism can be really helpful, And I personally wasn't so much affected by the lockdown because I work from home mainly. So for me it was okay. It gave me actually some extra time because I didn't have to, or I couldn't meet with friends. So I just had more time for myself, which I, enjoyed. I read more, and I went for more walks, and I just spent more time in solitude, which I find helpful, valuable, to be just with yourself. So, again, Stoicism can be helpful in these challenging situations.
Was there any moment you found yourself getting like real frustrated about anything, or were you very, very zen about the whole thing?
I got a bit frustrated, or I just asked questions because I thought we don't know so much about this virus. And what was frustrating, and maybe still is frustrating, is that you don't really know what is the truth, because you get different information from different sources and things change so quickly. In the beginning they said masks are useless, or some said masks are useless, and now we have to wear masks in Switzerland, just in public transport, but in different countries you have to wear masks always when you're in a closed room with other people. So I would say that is still a bit frustrating, that there's something out there that's, affecting so many lives, or the whole world basically. And it's hard to get an overview of what's the truth and what's right and what's wrong about, the information we get. And that I find challenging.
That was definitely frustrating for me as well. One of the frustrating things I'm finding, especially at the moment, is I discovered last week that they had found samples of COVID-19 in the water in parts of I think it was Italy and in Paris. And there was someone who had been ill in November of last year, and they had gone back and tested samples they'd taken then from him, and he was positive with coronavirus in November of last year, which means it was around for at least 3-4 months in Europe before anything happened in terms of the lockdown. So I get slightly frustrated when people talk about going back into lockdown, because Anyway, I don't want to talk about coronavirus all day because, yeah, I'd much rather talk about Stoicism. Yeah. So do you find that, do you know like a real life Stoic sage? In the book you talk about finding, you have to imagine the most ideal person, like the Stoic sage. There's always expressing like the best version of themselves. There's always in eudaimonia. Do you know someone that you consider to be that person, or someone that comes close there in real life, or even just like a celebrity or author or someone that you like hold up as someone like that?
I mean, the Stoics use the sage as an ideal, and I think they said, there are no sages around as human beings, and I think you can look around and you won't find the people who have no struggles. But who comes to mind is this woman, who struggles herself, obviously, but she came into my life at the right time. And because I worked in a school for mentally handicapped children, and she was a teacher there, and for me, she's been tremendously helpful, and she's an impressive woman. And for me, she just was right, or she's right. I look up to her and I can learn a lot from her. But it's not that she's much, much further than other people. I think that's just for me. This person resonates. And maybe we all find our own, people we can look up to. And with her, it's her energy, and she vibrates this positive energy when she comes into the room. And it's, you work with, challenging kids, I'd say. And she always knows it's going to be all right. You can feel this positive attitude. It's not going to work. She's always sure somehow it's going to work out, even if the kids are really challenging at this time for whatever reason. And, you learn to read with these kids, or to, do mathematics, and sometimes they don't really want to, or they don't feel like it, just as it's for us as well, And she somehow managed always, to get, to work with the kid, and somehow it always worked out. And so I believe, life or the universe will bring the people into your life that are helpful at this stage where you are in life. And for me, that was this woman and different people. And, there were many young people at this school, and they looked at this woman in a different way than I did, or I still do. So you always get the people that are right for you at this time, or wherever you're standing in life. And I wouldn't say there's one person or one sage I really look up to, but I want to learn from people. And I mean, we are all just growing, in life, and we don't know how to live our lives perfectly. So, as a child, you grow up and you think your parents know everything, and at a certain point you realize, no, they just struggling as much as everybody else. Adult doesn't mean anything. They have a bit more experience, but they don't know how to live life, or they're not masters at the art of living, basically. So we all continuously learn and grow, and you get these people that help you get to the next level in a way.
Do you think that that's the universe giving you the people that you need at the right time? Or do you think that's just your Stoic philosophy telling you that, you've just made the best, and you've gone, well, you know what, this person was so influential, and you go, that was meant to be as such? Because I had a similar experience with someone who comes to mind as someone I really hold up as someone that inspires me to live the best version of my life. It was this woman I work with in winter now. I feel like I've known her my whole life, but it's been less than 3 years since I met her. And it's such like a random friendship. Like I'm this 26-year-old guy from Ireland, and she's this 47-year-old Dutch woman who's just a powerhouse of life. And I met her because I ended up going to Austria after I'd had this, like, I'd been with this girl for 3 years, and we had this breakup, and I really felt like it had broken me. Like all of the like future possibilities in my life had just been like thrown out the window, and I did not know what to do. And then within weeks, I was out in Austria, and I met this woman who's become like one of my best friends. So to me, it does feel like it was meant to be. But do you think that's just like our minds making the best of it? Or do you really think that the universe is giving us what we need?
I do believe the universe is giving us what we need. Yeah, but I mean, how do you want to prove it, right? I mean, maybe it's both, our mind's understanding that this person is helpful right now. But yeah, I do believe our life will take these turns that help us grow, because we're here for some reason. I don't know what's the reason, maybe it changes, with time, or we're just here to grow in consciousness and make this experience here on Earth. And I would say it's no accident you meet, the people you meet. Sometimes maybe it's challenging people, but also the challenging people, they help you grow. They maybe show you where you can, learn some new skill. Maybe you learn that you're not so patient with people, or you get frustrated easily. Or, I mean, for me, I get people. Where I not as patient as I would like to be is with people who talk, I wouldn't say too much, but they talk a lot without looking, for the other people, who might want to say something as well, or who are not even interested, or and often in my view, they don't listen, so they just talk and never stop, and maybe they ask question, but then you cannot even finish your first sentence, and they're already talking. And for me, I think I've had or still have these people in my life because it's a skill, or it's somewhere I can grow, in patience with these people who might are not the best listeners, or maybe it's showing me that I can become a better listener. Or I think it's both kind of people, people you look up to and the people you're not fond of are or can be really helpful.
Well, that is very Stoic. It's about, what you make of people as well as what you make of events. You can't control other people as much as you can control other events.
Exactly.
Some people would maybe argue with the idea that you can't control people, but everyone is their own person. Like you can try and push them in a certain direction, but ultimately, like, they're gonna do what they want.
That's manipulative. I mean, I think we manipulate people whether we really want to or not, but you can do more or less manipulation, I think.
Well, I mean, when I'm podcasting, I have to manipulate where I want the conversation to go. But
Sure.
So at the start of your book, you talk about how you finished school and you went traveling, and you thought, okay, this is my opportunity to go and find myself, because that's like a real travel cliche, or it may be true, but it's definitely something that you hear a lot from people. Like, they're going to go, I'm going to go travel. I need to find myself. I need to go and discover who I am by just getting on a plane. And you said that you discovered that wasn't really the case for you, that you didn't find like that those answers or the feeling or that you were looking for in that. Like, why do you think that it is that people believe that by leaving the country that they will discover who they are?
I don't know. maybe we've learned it in our society, or for me it was just getting away, and I wanted to read the things I'm interested in, and I was studying before and going to school before, and you always need to read the books for school basically, or for university, and I just thought, I want to be free. And I didn't really know what I wanted to become after university, and so I studied sports science and English languages and literature. And so because I wanted to become a teacher at some point, and after my studies I didn't want to become a teacher. So I thought traveling is going to help me find out what I want from life, or who I want to be. And it did magically help me know what I want from life. And so maybe at this point, maybe it was disappointing, when you go try to learn what you really want from life. But looking back, it was a helpful time, and I do believe, if you travel, if you travel alone like I did, you spend more time with yourself alone, which is always helpful, because when you grow up, or if you just live your life at home, you have so many sources of distractions. You watch TV, or today Netflix, and you have a computer and your cell phone. And when I left Switzerland, I just brought my cell phone, and I didn't have internet available, just the Wi-Fi. So I tried to be alone and journal and read. And looking back, it was a helpful 7 months, and I do believe it can be really helpful. But you can find yourself anywhere. You don't need to hop on a plane, or go to Australia or somewhere. But I think if it feels right, go and travel. If you want to stay at home, stay at home. I would say both is right. You can.
It could be a factor of taking yourself out of your comfort zone, and really being forced to just put yourself in situations you haven't, and watch how you react. And that's perhaps the thing that people find that's they're finding themselves, is that it's no longer a routine. Like you have to confront decisions that you maybe would have never had to, and then you have to think about your own thought process. And why do you think the solitude part is so important?
Because we're never alone with ourselves, and I think we should, or if you are alone with yourself more frequently, you learn to you learn that there are thoughts in your mind all the time, and you learn about your emotions and feelings. And if you distract yourself all the time, you might not realize this. And if you sit at home yourself and you're alone, and mean thoughts come up, you might just flick on the TV. But if you're somewhere else, I don't know, and you cannot distract yourself, you have to be with yourself and learn about your thoughts and emotions. And I think it's a helpful challenge to be alone with yourself and your thoughts, and you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn about learned behaviors, for example. And I think if you want to grow, that's important to understand why you do things, or why you don't feel like doing something, so you can make yourself, or learn how to do something you don't want to do, and maybe stop doing something you always do but maybe you shouldn't do.
Did you have an example of that you found when you were on your travels? You found that there was habits or something you picked up or at home where you just thought were normal or just something you'd done your whole life, and then when you came to being away, you thought, okay, I got to change that? Was there something specific that you can remember?
Maybe that I tried to, or as a child, I was kind of the teacher. We're 4 brothers, and they always, nag me that I'm the teacher. I tried to tell my brothers, what to do or what is right and wrong. But as a child, you don't realize, and I didn't realize for a long time, but maybe on this travel, I realized that it doesn't need to be my way. This is just my opinion. Another person has another opinion, which is also true. It's what I think is true, but what you think is true is in a way also true. So maybe I learned, to be more flexible and tolerant towards others and their, how to do something, Yeah, maybe that, and, getting more patient, because I traveled with French guys through New Zealand, and they were challenging for me, and
Why?
You travel with people you haven't known before, and everybody has an idea of what to do and how to do and when to do it, and because I was Swiss and there were 3 and later 4 French people, and maybe there was a difference in culture, so they agreed on something and I would have done something else. That was challenging, being in minority. Plus, I saved quite a lot, or I saved a long time for this trip. And, in New Zealand, you get chances to do many cool activities, and the French guys didn't have any money, like, at all. So, yeah, so I didn't get to do those things I thought would have been fun, river rafting or something like this. For me, would be awesome, because I love the water, but they didn't have the money, and I didn't want to, invite them because I didn't have so much money. It was just different things that challenged me, and I would say it was, patience and, tolerance that I learned most from the traveling.
So why do you think is it that a philosophy that's now 2,500 years old is so applicable to our 21st century lives? Because the amount of times, even like I'm guilty of it. In my book, I talk about how rapidly our culture and our world is changing, and how, the challenges of social media and of just like this constant interconnectedness and the shrinking of the entire world are meaning that in every aspect of life we have to challenge, or we're being challenged with things that no humans have ever had to deal with, like, ever. The difference between like my experience from up to my point in my life at 26 is so different from my grandparents and even my parents just 20 or 30 years ago, and yet this philosophy just still seems so applicable to 21st century life. Like in fact, I almost feel like it's more so because it's about like taking time out and realizing, like you said, about solitude and finding how you want to live like the best version of your life. And that can be so difficult with social media just constantly bombarding you. You just, like you said, you're never bored, or you're never more than a few feet away from a distraction now. And yet, so this philosophy is almost teaching us to reject those distractions. Why do you think it's still so applicable in our modern lives?
Well, the lifestyles have changed a lot, but the battles are still fought between our ears. It's a mind battle, if you want, and maybe it's, as you said, it's even more relevant today than it was 2,000 years ago, because at least in the Western world we have more freedom to think about life, because survival is given, and maybe we have different questions we ask ourselves, because now it's about happiness in a way. And you can say the Stoics said it was about that 2,000 years ago, but it was also a lot about survival. And when you're fighting for survival, you don't get to think so much about being happy. And now today we want to be happy as well, in the Western world at least. And I think you're right, it's more relevant today because the mind hasn't changed so much. I mean, maybe we're more conscious, or people are more conscious than 2,000 years ago, I would say.
What do you mean by conscious?
Aware. We more, I would say the humans, we develop over thousands of years in consciousness, we grow in consciousness. Just the human consciousness grows, and we have less wars, for example, and we look more to each other, even if it's not true all over the world, obviously, but probably it's become better. So I would say we are more awake than 2,000 years ago, but it's obviously impossible to say because I couldn't remember that I lived during that time.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that there's like a genuine like growth of human consciousness, or do you think we're just exposed to like more ideas and more people, and the fact that we can like see all around the world? Do you think that has helped it, or do you think it really is like the humanity has grown as like an entire species in consciousness?
I think it's both. I would say one reason is culture. You learn from your parents, and parents learn from their parents. Plus, you learn from basically the wisest people on earth, or who have ever lived. I mean, we read books now from Marcus Aurelius, who was probably a very, very wise person, and Benjamin Franklin, who was a wise person, and modern people who seem to be very smart, and we can learn from all these people, from the smartest people from all over the world. So I do believe that makes that is a big aspect why we grow in consciousness, because we have more sources. I mean, 2,000 years ago you lived in a town, and you basically probably stayed in that town, and you had maybe 100, 200 people in your life, and today more people are available, let's say it this way. I mean, I wrote the book, and people from all over the world can read that book if they choose to do so, and that wasn't thinkable maybe 200 years ago, 100 years ago. So I think these are aspects, plus the culture that you pass on, the wisdom, and maybe it's just time. In the universe, everything is always moving and always changing, and it's hard to say, but I do believe people grow in consciousness more and more, and probably I believe so because I've read it somewhere, and
So you're saying that we have so many sources of so much wisdom from the whole of human history that we can now been almost absorbed into our like cultural zeitgeist, that it's just almost common knowledge, some of this wisdom at this point, and it's there at the fingertips of anyone that wants to get it.
Yes. Especially I would say if you read spiritual books, that's, for me, it's been really helpful, when I read Eckhart Tolle, I learned about, me not being my thoughts, and, observing yourself and observing your thoughts. And maybe without the book, I wouldn't have learned it, or realized it so clearly. So, depending on what you read, I think it can be really helpful for you to grow.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I've been thinking about something that Tim Ferriss says, and that I believe it was something that Seneca was a proponent of, was not reading too much. Do you think that is a real thing to be concerned about? Like, you don't want to consume too many ideas? Because I guess their point is that you should focus on what is crucial. Like Tim Ferriss is all about the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your productivity or your output, or the 80% of the gains you will get from anything come in 20% of the time. And his entire life seems to just be focused on finding that 20%. Do you buy into that concept where you shouldn't be exploring too many ideas because it will clutter your mind?
Maybe not because it will clutter your mind, but because you won't put it into practice. That's what we need to do if we want to grow. I mean, we have to try to do it, and so we can experience it in our own lives, and only this way we can get to know it. If you read it, I would say you know about it, but you don't know whether it's true for you, if you don't put it into practice. And I mean, that was, for me, really important it is important in Stoic philosophy. That what I like about the Stoics is that they really focus on putting their ideas into practice. As I said, we are no masters at the art of living, and we can read as many books as we want. If we don't put it into practice, it's useless, and we'll forget about it, and maybe we do the opposite. So yes, I do think we can read too much or consume too much information, definitely, and without putting it into practice, because maybe it's more attractive, to read and read and read because it's fascinating, but you will forget about it, and if you don't apply it, maybe it's almost useless.
Okay, so I want to ask you about your biohacking. No, I know I haven't totally planned on going there, but I'm really curious. Like, what is biohacking for someone who's never heard of the term, or what does it mean to you, and where did you come across it first? You said you were an English and sports science major. Was it something that you found while you were studying the sports science side of things, or was it something that came to you later on?
Maybe I found it in sports science, but with the term biohacking came definitely later on. I mean, it's about hacking your body, basically. And it's just something that fascinates my brother and me. We are both fascinated by, trying to get the most out of yourself. Now, that is in different parts, mind-wise, but also physically. So I would say it's about getting as much energy as you can get, as healthy as you can get, so you have a lot of energy throughout the day. You don't get sick, or not as frequently, and you're just a healthy, flourishing human being. And I think you can do, Stoicism is just, would say, about the mind, but there are at least two other parts as well, which are body and spirit. So we try to do or to improve in all those aspects. Body is interesting, and for the body, we're interested in nutrition, for example. So it was a couple of years ago we had this huge pan of, or a pot of vegetables almost every day, and when we tried the ketogenic diet, with almost no carbs, and we still eat low carb, and we try to eat natural foods, not artificial foods, all these things that have a long storage life, that are probably not very good for you. So we've read many books on nutrition because it's just something that fascinates us, and we haven't written about it on our blog because, I don't know, we believe we have to focus on a bit more narrow way, at least in the beginning. And so nutrition, sleep highly important. It's we try to get a lot of sleep, but also high quality sleep. It's not the same thing. Quality and quantity, and then movement. So nutrition, sleep, and movement are the things we focused on. I mean, we work from home at the computer, but we try to have smart breaks. Go for walks and work out. Not every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Sorry, and get some movement in. Just go for a walk, or now in summer we go for swims in the river, and yeah, we like playing football. We like playing tennis. All these sports. So we try to integrate those things into our lifestyle. So biohacking for us, it's something that's fascinating for us, and we have a couple of guys. We have Ben Greenfield and Dave Asprey we look up to, and so always when we try to recover better or do something, we read up what they have to say about it, or when we get the flu, we try to find out what they have to say about the flu and how you can get rid of it quickly and how you maybe prevent it. So yeah, biohacking is about hacking your body so you get as much energy as possible.
I've got so many questions. So it's interesting you mentioned like the fact that there's the mind, the body, and the brain. So one of my best friends describes his philosophy for that sort of thing as he's got these 4 pillars for life. So he's got emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental. So you have to look after all 4 pillars. And it's just how he expresses it. I really like that way of looking at it, because I don't actually think I've ever heard anyone like use that exact sort of terminology for it. So I really enjoy when he talks about it. I keep telling him to write a book on it, but he tells me just because I wrote one, not everyone has to. But you were talking about like the connection between the mental and physical aspects of so. Richard Branson, I think it was, said someone asked him how he becomes more productive, and he said, "I work out." And there's the connection really. Like I was like, yeah, and I've really started to try and do some research into this at the moment. But the first thing I got to ask is the sleep. So I've been during lockdown. Anyway, I was being driven crazy by the fact that I had no time by myself. Because after my ski season, I normally come back and I don't want to talk to anyone for about 2 weeks, because I have done nothing but just be, from the moment I wake to the moment I go to sleep, I'm on as such, and I have to like interact with people, and I come down and then my boss is there, and then we're organizing things for, right, we're talking about last night, and then we're organizing things for this night, and then I go up the mountain, I'm talking to people, it's a little resort, I'm always seeing people and talking, and I love that. But when I'm done, then I'm like done. So when I went home, I was living with 2 friends of mine, and I just was becoming crazy. It wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. I was just like, I just need some space. I just want to not have anyone around for a little while. And so I was looking up, I started like going to bed earlier and earlier so I could wake up earlier. And then I came across some people talking about the different types of sleep cycles that people have experimented with, and the idea that humans didn't used to sleep for 8 hours straight through, or 8.5 or 7.5 hours, that it was 2 distinct like sections, that it would be 4.5 hours or 4 hours plus waking up and then going again for another little bit of sleep. So I started experimenting with I think it was called the Everyman 1. So it was like 6 hours of sleep at night and then a 30 or 40 minute nap in the afternoon. Have you come across this like idea of different polyphasic and biphasic sleep cycles before? And what was your thoughts on it? Have you experimented with it?
I experiment just with taking naps after afternoon, after lunch. I read about these things. really some sleep, I don't know, just 1.5 hours, and take then they wake and they sleep again, and they sleep in short terms or short naps almost throughout the day, which I've never tried it, and I don't think it's practical. And it's for me, I try to look at nature, and it's dark at night, so I wouldn't know what to do else but sleep, throughout the night. But I read that in for example Maasai culture, or these indigenous people, what's natural is they sleep maybe they start sleeping before midnight, and then you wake up, I know, at 1 or 2, and maybe you're awake for an hour or so, and that's like meditative, I don't know, sleep. It's not sleep, but you're awake, but you don't do anything. You're just with yourself, and you're relaxing. And I read that they sleep this way. I don't know whether it's true or not. So it helped me, when I wake up during the night, it helped me take it easy. It's no big deal. Maybe it's natural, to wake up during the night. You just, stay in bed and be with yourself. So that, I think it's interesting, the sleep and experimenting with the sleep. And a couple of years ago, I had this routine where I would write down, I would try to measure my quality of the sleep. I used a sleep cycle at that time. Mm-hmm. It's an app.
Yeah. I think I was using it every night. I'm not at the minute, just because I'm on holiday. It's a little more difficult. But
so I tried to write down all the things I thought were important for the sleep. Exercise, last coffee, the last meal, plus what I ate for the last meal. So I would just write down these things, and then measure the quality of the sleep. And after a while, try to look at it. But I think it was helpful, to be more aware of what you do that could interrupt your sleep. But it wasn't, it's very scientific to get to know what affects your sleep. But I think you do it if you're aware, and if you reflect before you go to bed, and if you ask yourself what did you do that could affect the sleep, you will figure out a couple of things. Maybe that late night meal isn't helpful, coffee isn't helpful, and intensive training isn't helpful.
Intensive training isn't helpful?
Depending on the time, yeah. If it's too close to bedtime, I think it's because of your body temperature, which is then too high. It won't help you sleep well. Maybe you fall asleep quickly, but the quality of the sleep is not too well. That's what I heard. So when you have intensive training, I think timing is important. Yeah. And there are many things which are important, for the sleep. Also, the bedroom should be pitch dark and pretty cool, not too warm. The bed. There I've read different things. Some say very hard mattress, some say soft as well. I've been using pretty hard mattress, and actually I also, for Stoicism, they have this idea of voluntary discomfort. So I slept on the floor, once a week or twice a week for a couple of months on a yoga mat, and I measured that the deep, or I was like, I had more deep sleep, but almost no REM sleep.
Okay.
And probably it's because it wasn't very comfortable. When I was in light sleep, I would wake up instead of going to REM sleep. But I don't know. But I had very low pulse, lower than in my bed, which was interesting. And I think you can experiment with yourself, and whether you measure it or not, maybe might not be too important, but being aware of what you do and when you do it is helpful. And also what I've been doing is using an app called Snore Lab, which measures your snoring, which I think it was a woman who told me that I snore, and I was like, oh, probably that's not, you don't want to snore, or nobody wants to snore, because it's just for other people it's annoying, and you're ashamed. Plus you think maybe it's not the best sleep you get when you snore. So I tried to experiment with that, and this app was really helpful, because it shows you how much you snored or didn't snore, and you can try different things, and some help more than others. And worse probably is drinking alcohol before you go to sleep. That was pretty bad for me with the snoring. And different things you can do. Your position, try to sleep on my side, which is the best for not snoring, for me at least. So I just try different things and try to get the best sleep possible.
I mean, I guess it's when I feel like when you get down to really specific things like that, it becomes very much, you have to figure out what's right for you. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin, or I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But he was talking about, there's a whole chapter dedicated to organizing like your own medical treatment. And not so much that he's like doing all his research himself. It's just about, if you go in and a doctor says, this is what we're recommending. He says, okay, a lot of people can get stressed out about, or not like that the doctor is just telling you and not explaining. And he encourages you to go in with lots of questions and try and get him to find like a treatment that's for you and not specifically for everyone. And he was talking about some experiments that were run about different alternative medicines, because he was talking about how alternative medicine is just medicine that no one has evidence that it works yet or will ever work. But that some little tiny things like vitamin D tablets, or just like little like things that people claim to be helpful, is just almost random in how it affects each individual person. That there's no like broad trend, and even for lots of like accepted medicines, that there is no like universal, this is what this does kind of thing. And that's why obviously side effects vary dependent on different people. And I find it very, very much that you've got to discover like what works for you. But that's interesting that you had like better sleep, or well, more deep sleep, but less REM sleep on the floor. It's pretty, like, it's crazy how, because you would imagine that things like that don't get that affected by how comfy your mattress is. You just imagine like, okay, you're sleeping. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was about nutrition, and you said you've read a lot, and I found that before this year especially, that anytime I was reading about diet and nutrition or supplements or anything, that there's so much information out there and so many people trying to claim that they have the answer. What would you say are like the biggest like common misconceptions, and maybe the easiest things or the most simple things that you can do to be like live a healthier life based on your research anyway?
So I would say fasting is the best thing you can do for your health. So you can do intermittent fasting. So that's what we've been doing for years. We just skip breakfast, but on some days when we need extra energy, we have and when I say we, I'm talking about my brother Niels and me. We're living together. So we have, on these days, we have bulletproof coffee. It's coffee with butter and C8 oil. You can use MCT oil as well, and sometimes we add collagen, which is an important protein. It's good for your skin and bones, and I think it's really important, or it's healthy protein. So we add that to the coffee. So I would say fasting, and you can do classic 16-8. You fast for 16 hours and eat for 8 hours. And maybe if it's challenging, you start with 12-12, which is already good. And then you go to 10 hours of eating window. And what people often miss or how they mess it up is with the late time, for example, when in the morning they add sugar or milk to the coffee, so that's not really fasting anymore. Or at night they have some late night snacking, and for our digestive system and the gut, it's healthy not to have a long break between meals, or at least once every day. We do longer fasts as well, 24, 48 hours, 72 hours.
Really?
Sometimes, yeah. Not on a, maybe.
No, not on a regular.
Yeah. So this year we did a 5-day water fast, which was really interesting because it's so easy when you're used to fasting, at least, So, and it, you get, or here's what happened with me is I got hungry, on the first day. Plus, I had a slight headache, which is probably because I didn't drink any coffee or didn't have the caffeine. And then you just, I would say I was a bit lower energy, but very stable throughout the day. And we went for many walks. And on last day, on Friday, I went to the gym and worked out. And surprisingly, I used the same weights as normally, and it wasn't a problem at all.
After a 5-day fast.
Yes, and so it's interesting. People believe, or I used to believe, you need to eat 3 times a day, which is something we learn, or I don't know. And also, people who go to the gym, I often, because I work in the gym, maybe 6 or 7 hours a week only. And I often tell people, try some fasting because they want to become leaner, for example. And then they're afraid of losing, muscle tissue. And they believe they need to eat a lot and a lot. But it turns out that's not really true. Maybe it's not the same for everybody, but.
So why is it that fasting is good for you? Like, what is it that... Yeah, but what is the process that means because, and one of the things you always hear when you're a kid, I don't know, maybe it's different when you're developing, but it's like you have to eat breakfast. Like breakfast, the most important meal of the day, and okay, sometimes I need breakfast. Sometimes I wake up and I'm fucking hungry. I'm like, okay, I need to eat something. I need, like this morning, I was like, hilariously, maybe this complete misconception, but I was like, right, okay. I want to do a good podcast. So I want to have loads of energy, like this, have real good breakfast, and I'll be ready for it. I'll have. But what is it that about fasting that like biologically is good for you?
So with the skipping breakfast, I would say for me that's best productivity tool there is, because you don't spend time preparing breakfast. Plus, you have more or clearer energy, and I'm very clear in the head, when I skip breakfast and have this coffee or bulletproof coffee, because I'm not digesting. But why is it that fasting is so good for you? I'm the wrong person to ask. I mean, we've read countless books, but as I've never written about it, just put it into practice. In my own life, I can't really answer this question. I know it's good, or I believe it's good because I've read it, and because I believe we've done together the research, and it's pretty clear that fasting or intermittent fasting is good for you. But what are the specific things that happen in your gut and digestive system? I can't really say.
Okay, well, so you're just referring to people with more knowledge.
Yes, definitely.
So what would you say are some simple things that people could do to just be more healthy?
We talked about sleep. So for a couple of years, we've been wearing, orange tinted glasses, like at least an hour before we go to bed when we're at home. And that's because blue light somehow, when you're living, we all have blue lights here everywhere. And in the evening, somehow blue light blocks melatonin, either production or just that you get it. And melatonin is I would say, sleep well hormone. It helps you sleep well. So you have less melatonin when you're, in bright light before you go to bed. And so we dim our lights and we use these glasses, very cheap, ugly glasses, but they are really helpful, I must say. So that's a simple thing you can do. We have UVEX orange tinted glasses. I think they were about $10 or so. And you can fast. You can make sure your room where you sleep or your bedroom is dark and cool. Try to move, even if you, like my brother and me, we work basically in an office, so we sit a lot, and that's not very good. But if you make smart breaks, go for a walk or do some stretching routines, or just manage to get some movement in, so you don't sit for 60 minutes in the exact same position. That's already helpful. Try not to eat, sugary foods, and maybe vegetable oils. You can skip them for good. It's interesting. Vegetable oils, they're not good for our health. They have a good name, vegetable oils, but it's mostly not the seed oil, and it wasn't around, 100 years ago. So you have better oils, you have healthy fats like coconut fat, butter, and olive oil. So you have good fats in your diet. Yeah, there are countless things you can do, but these are very simple, or I would say simple measurements you can try to incorporate in your life. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been able to whilst I've been away, but I normally take coconut oil in my coffee every morning, just like 1 teaspoon. And I don't know if it was a placebo, but I definitely felt it gave me more energy, like through the day. It could have been in combination with the fact I was doing more yoga or meditating. It's very, very difficult to put like a finger on exactly what it is that's giving you that energy sometimes when you're like changing a lot of things. But do you take any supplements or like a multivitamin or cod liver oil or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, or most important, I take as well are vitamin D3 combined with vitamin K or K2 and krill oil at night. Sometimes I take melatonin just when I wasn't able to put on my glasses. So I supplement with melatonin, but that's very small dosage. At the moment, I'm using, I think it's My Community Immune Support. These are mushrooms by Paul Stamets, a mushroom freak.
The guy that he's been on Joe Rogan talking about the mushrooms, right?
I haven't seen him on Joe Rogan, but I've seen his TED Talks, and they have He created a fantastic movie I would like to recommend, Fantastic Fungi. And yeah, it's a very interesting film. So I take these supplements at the moment, and I have a brain biotic or probiotic for the brain. I don't know which ones these are, but I think probiotics can be useful, but I usually don't have these supplements. Plus I use a supplement, it's called Nutrafol. It's hair wellness, but I really like the mix of ingredients in this supplement. Plus I'm happy not to lose my hair, so and I listened to a podcast, I think it was Dave Asprey's, the Bulletproof podcast, where they recommended this supplement, and I tried it, and I think it has many good things in this supplement, so I'm happy to take this and not take too many other supplements. So vitamin D3, K2, and krill oil, I would say, most important. I count collagen almost as a supplement. I think that's a good protein source, either in the morning or in the evening. Sometimes we have L-theanine with coffee, just that's to be more focused at work. Yeah, L-theanine, caffeine is a good combination for work. I think, we have many supplements, but these are the ones I take at the moment.
It's interesting though when I asked about things you can change, that all of the things you mentioned were to do with sleep. Like, do you really think that's the most crucial part of living a healthy life is the quality of your sleep? Because, for example, there's people that, they say Margaret Thatcher, she was a Prime Minister of Britain, used to survive on 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. And she was Prime Minister for 11 years. And she's a very controversial figure. Some people think she was completely one of the best Prime Ministers Britain ever had. And some people would call her murderous, and maybe not a very good person. There were celebrations when she died, put it that way. So do you think sleep is really one of the most crucial parts?
Maybe it's because we talked about sleep. I think sleep is important, but yeah, it's not. Maybe for some it's because it's underrated. I feel it's underrated. People, if they don't have enough time, they just sleep less. And I work with people who want to lose weight or gain muscle mass. And for what I have read, I would say if you have not enough sleep, it's really hard to lose weight, for example, because but you can, or I imagine, from an evolutionary standpoint, that naturally you would just sleep until you wake up, or until the sunshine wakes you up, or so you would get probably most certainly more sleep than you're getting right now when you're setting an alarm. So I imagine that for our bodies, it's like stress. We're not getting enough sleep, so it's a stressful day or stressful situation, and if you have this over a long period of time, the body focuses on other things than losing weight. Maybe keeping on to fat tissue is maybe better for survival, right? Because you can survive longer when you have these energy sources in your body. So yeah, I would say sleep is really important, that it's underrated, but there are many other things you can do.
Okay, well, just to bring us back to Stoicism then.
Oh yeah.
Do you think Stoicism should be taught in schools? Or do you think it's something that people need to discover themselves to really appreciate?
Well, maybe it could be taught in schools. And, maybe schools should change a bit anyway. They're not very modern, I'd say. And it's interesting. Recently, a woman wrote, and I read it, that if you would do what we do to young children, put them on the chair for 45 minutes and they shouldn't move for 45 minutes. If you would do the same thing to dogs, then we would have animal rights activists, complaining about, how we treat these dogs. But we do that with children who are as, movement-loving creatures as dogs are. So maybe we should, before we add Stoicism to our schools, we should maybe think about, having a different school system. But yeah, I think it would be helpful, because we don't learn these things at school, how to deal with your emotions when you, or in the relationships, when you're struggling. When you're struggling with yourself, you don't really learn these things in school. So Stoicism would be one option to offer them some tools they can use, to deal better with their emotions and challenges.
What would you say that, or if you had to give like a few Stoic practices that everyone can just easily apply to their life, like immediately after, listening to this fantastic podcast, what would it be? Is there something that springs to mind as to something that everyone can almost apply immediately?
Yes, there are many practices you can do. I mean, when you try to express your best self in every moment, you need some awareness in the moment. So one tool I find really helpful to improve your everyday awareness is, apart from meditation, is personal reflection. And the Stoics, they were big on reflection. Seneca has this, section when he said that when his wife felt silent and he was aware of his habit, that he would reflect upon his actions that day. So when you just take 5 minutes before you go to bed, for example, and you ask yourself, what went well that day? What did you do well? What could you do better? And what do you have to do to, express your best? You reflect upon your actions, and that's helpful to become more aware, because when you do it for a couple of days in a row, your mind will know during the day that you're going to ask yourself what you did well during the day. So you're more aware in the situation, and then you can probably better respond in the way you find you want to respond. So that's one simple practice, personal reflection, or write in a journal. One thing I do is, the view from above. And I do this when I'm overwhelmed, maybe it's a problem or a challenge, or I'm just a bit lost and I'm overwhelmed, and I try to zoom out, take the bird's eye view, and this often helps, to get another perspective on my problem or the challenge I'm facing right now. And this is, it's like magic, I'd say. It's because you're aware, you zoom out, and then you're automatically a bit freed up, and you don't take it too seriously. That's helpful. And maybe a practice you can do, throughout the day is, I think in the book it's called Scratches Happen in Training. And I think Ryan Holiday has it in this book, The Daily Stoic, as well. And you look at life as, training ground, basically, because you say nobody is a master at the art of living. Nobody knows how to live, perfectly well. So we're all training, in a way. And the Stoics enjoyed, boxing metaphors. So they would say, like, when you're training with your sparring partner and the sparring partner hits you in the face, it happens. It's just training. He didn't do it on purpose. So suddenly the stakes become much lower, and you're more forgiving, you're more tolerant, and probably more compassionate as well, because the other person is training who maybe hurt you, and you are just training, you make mistakes as well. Everybody, we make mistakes, and we're just in training, and scratches happen. So if you have this attitude, you can be more forgiving towards others.
I really enjoyed some of the warrior philosopher sort of like metaphors in the book. I really liked that. I don't know why it was so useful, but that and the Hercules example. You know, Hercules wouldn't have been Hercules if he just turned over and went back to bed. You know, he needed the lion to slay and the hydra to kill. And I really, really enjoyed that. It like made me look at some of the challenges that I was sort of facing very differently. Do you journal in the morning or in the evening or both?
Currently, I don't journal because I've had 2 months relaxing. Basically, I didn't feel like doing too much. I was enjoying the summer, and I met a lot of people now after the lockdown. So I kind of, I didn't journal, or not as frequently as I used to, but before I journaled in the evening for years, and I would do different practices, you know, sometimes just gratitude journaling, sometimes the exercise I mentioned, good, better, best exercise, where you ask what went well and what you could do better. Sometimes I just, you know, did a journal entry, just wrote about what I had in mind and wrote about what's going on in my mind, and that's always helpful to me, you know, to write down these things. You know, when you have a person that might have been irritating, and then you write it down, and your emotions, you know, that accompany this irritation, and then suddenly, something good comes out of it. And for a short time, I journaled in the morning as well, but I'd rather do a movement exercise, a movement routine in the morning. I do a couple of yoga exercises in the morning, and that works better for me. And right now I read basically first thing in the morning. So I do this movement routine, and then I read between 10 and 20 minutes. I read. Right now I'm reading David R. Hawkins' Letting Go. It's a fascinating book, you know, about, you know, dealing with your emotions, or how to let go, basically, of some negative emotions. And
yeah. So yeah, just to wrap up then, like, what are 3 books maybe, or TED Talks or podcasts, or just like 3 things that you would recommend to someone on that are about Stoicism, that this is purely my own interest, the next things I want to go and look at after now having read your book?
So this book on Stoicism I read most recently was by Donald Robertson, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. You're going to learn a lot about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism, and I really enjoyed this book. It was an interesting read. Then, William Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life, I find it's a really helpful book, you know, to get better understanding of Stoicism. And I think last year or the beginning of the year, I read Marie Forleo's book, Everything is Figure-outable, which is not classic Stoic literature, but as the title suggests, it's, you know, it has a positive attitude towards life. And I really enjoyed her book, and I think it might be interesting. You know, I think she has an audience with, you know, mostly women. So, and I think women often think there aren't, you know, many women practicing Stoicism. But I think Marie Forleo is a good example. You know, with some of her ideas, you can see maybe you don't label it as Stoicism, but it's maybe the same thing. So I do recommend her book, Everything is Figure-outable. I really enjoyed it, and it helped me, you know, continue doing what I struggled with. You know, you have a big project and it's hard, you know, to keep at it, and so that was really helpful.
Okay, well, Yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks very much. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget to pre-order my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War. It's now available on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks for listening.